Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the 360, fascinating conversations with interesting people. And I'm your host, Tim Braheem. And it is my pleasure to bring into the podcast forum for this episode someone who I've grown to know over the past 8 or 9 years on an intimate basis as a client and now as a friend, and someone who I respect immensely. Caleb LeGrand is a graduate of Bob Jones University with a degree in accounting, and he graduated in 2003. He began his career as a practicing accountant with Deloitte and later Dixon-Hughes before entering into mortgage banking in 2006. Mortgage banking and helping clients make informed and educated choices is not only a passion of Caleb's, but I think something that is the benchmark of why he is so successful. And I think that you're going to really get a feel for that during the course of the hour and 20 minutes or so that we spend together. His wife, Priscilla, and he have been married since 2003. Caleb is the oldest of 5 kids growing up and is a passionate fitness enthusiast and water skier. And he's super excited to start teaching his nephews how to water ski. If I take you back through memory lane a little bit, my personal experience with Caleb, he was a client of mine in the second group of Leadership 360. So back in 2013, I believe it was. And Caleb is a tremendous implementer, and he implemented a lot of the things that we learned together in Costa Rica that we taught him as a coaching unit, and he's really exploded his business. When I met Caleb back in 2013, he was doing between 15 and 18 loans a year, which were solid production numbers. But check out his numbers of late. In 2020, which was, of course, a great year for everyone, Caleb did 707 loans, of which 444 of those loans were purchases. In 2021, he did 651 loans, of which 499 of those loans were purchases. Talk about growing like a hockey stick. Well, we're going to get into the depths of why it is that his business has exploded and been so consistently high now for several years. A couple of other statistics that I think are important. 376 of his Google reviews are 5-star. And 2,478 of his social survey reviews average 4.93. These are astonishing statistics. The level of customer service and customer satisfaction that Caleb and his team provide is just top notch. And we're going to break that down. We're going to get into the reasons for it. And without further ado, I introduce you to Caleb LeGrand. What's up, Caleb?
Hey, Tim, how are you?
Good, man. Where are you at? You're at your office, I see.
I'm at the office here in South Carolina.
Dressed spiffy as ever.
Well, if you're going to pretend to be a banker, you need to look like one.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you guys didn't, in the pre-call, you were telling me that you guys didn't do the at-home work thing during the COVID pandemic. You pretty much stayed together as a team in the office, yeah?
Most of it. I mean, we shut down for maybe the first week or two when things first rolled out, but our state didn't have as aggressive a lockdown as others. We were deemed essential services, so we kept the office open, following protocols and all that fun stuff. And really, we're here most of the time.
I mean, you guys have always been tight as a team. How many people do you have on your team now?
It's 13 total, including myself.
Wow, man. That's like when we first met, you had a team of maybe four, including you. Is that right?
I think it was 5, including me. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's grown a lot. Well, let's dive in, man. Take us back to the beginning. I said a little bit about you in the intro. But, how long have you been in the business? What got you into it? What made that transition from accounting to mortgage banking? And just take us through a brief history of the maturation of your growth in the business.
So I got started in October of 2006. So going into almost 17 years now. Honestly, I just stumbled into mortgage banking kind of, butt backwards, like most people do, because I got out of school with an accounting degree, liked math, liked numbers, enjoyed that piece of it, but wasn't really finding fulfillment in the accounting side of things because it was very much a progression. So you're going to have to work for so many years before you go to the next level and things like that. So that wasn't super interesting. And when I got my first house, got my first mortgage, was talking with the mortgage brokers we went through, and he said, "Are you looking for a job?" And I said, "Are you hiring?" And literally started working there part-time for the first year, transitioned out of accounting into mortgage banking full-time, and still trying to figure out what I want to do when I become an adult and grow up.
So when you first started, how long did it take for you to make your first hire? Like how long were you in the business before you hired an assistant or a processor or whatever you did?
That would have been 2009.
So 6 years you were riding solo, huh?
Yeah, I was riding solo. So Kelly, we actually were just talking about this because she just clocked over 11 years. So I hired her in May of '09 was the first, and she was a processor slash loan officer assistant slash everything. It was just the two of us running and gunning as fast as we could to keep up with what was coming in. I got to the point where we had enough business coming in where I needed help, and she was an amazing first hire.
Yeah, I want to unpack that in a little bit. There's so many things that you and I see eye to eye on, which will kind of be very fun for me in this interview to just kind of banter back and forth on some things that I think both believe to be truisms. And I know that one of the ones that you also believe in is longevity of team members is super important, right? You have somebody like Kelly that's been with you for 13, going on 14 years. That's invaluable, isn't it?
Oh, I mean, the intellectual capital that builds up, and you think about all that brain knowledge that's been gathered over the years, and then you have continuity with clients. So clients come back and go, "Oh, I worked with Kelly last time," or it's just that familiarity. It builds that camaraderie both with the team, with the client base, with referral partners. So that cannot be undervalued.
Not at all, right? I mean, for a lot of reasons, notwithstanding the fact that it just makes life so much easier on you in terms of your ability to have some freedom. Because if your team members know your client base and vice versa intimately, then they don't necessarily need to talk to you as much, and they're super comfortable just moving forward doing a repeat finance transaction without you even being in the office, right?
Most times, yeah.
Cool. So let's go back again. I kind of derailed us there. So first hires in '09, and then you start growing it. Basically, I think when we met, which was in 2011, I believe you were doing, maybe it was 2012, I don't remember, but you're doing about 15 to 18 loans a month, and your team consisted of 5 people, including yourself. Then things just started to really take off, didn't it? Tell us a little bit about that and kind of bring us up to date as to what your production numbers have been recently in the last couple of years.
So we kind of added in batches. So we built to a certain level and realized we needed additional help to take it to the next level. What it has been my truth so far has been every time we've added a partner to the team, we've usually experienced an increase in the growth because we have more capacity, can do a better job, better customer service, all that good stuff. So we added 2 or 3 people thereafter, integrated those new partners to the team, added another 2 or 3 people, integrated them. So the last batch of hires was in 2019. We added 3 people in 19, which takes us up to the current level of what we've got of 13 partners. In terms of production, I mean, obviously 2020 and 2021 were blowout years. We did 707 loans in 2020. We did 650 loans in 21. We're very heavy purchase focused. So we've always maintained 60, 70, 80+% purchase money. So far year to date through May, we're having a little slower year just with rates having ticked up. We're 177 units through the end of May so far. And I mean, this year we're running like 95% purchase money. So it's the biggest swing for us was we moved from just general resale focus in probably, I want to say that was probably around 13 and 14 to going after large channel accounts with builders. And that was just really fortuitous with the lack of inventory. Getting those preferred relationships allowed us to really grow and expand, because then it becomes almost like an annuity. We stack up those future contracts, the business you're bringing in, the team size you need to have to support that and all that good stuff.
So there's a sidebar question that I have for you about that, which is, it strikes me that if you're adding team members in batches, 3 at a time, 2 at a time, stuff like that, you've built this team from, 2009, it was a team of 1 to 2022. It's a team of 13. I mean, that's some pretty substantial growth. You've made some excellent hires. What are a couple of important things that you think that listeners should be taking into consideration when evaluating a new hire? And what are some of the things you do to vet properly to make sure that you're not making that mistake of making a bad hire and then finding out 6 months later you're back to ground zero and it's Groundhog Day and you're having to start all over again?
I've been really blessed and fortunate on that aspect of hiring. So the best success I've had, or best practices I would give, most of the partners that are on the team have come as referrals from someone on the team. So we've only made 2 complete outside hires, meaning they didn't know anybody on the team. Everyone else was friend of a friend type of thing. So that's worked very well. And I firmly believe in you hire slow, fire fast. And thankfully, we've only had, over all the years, we've only had 2 team partners that rotated out. And it was truly one of those things where they sort of self-selected out. The rest of the team has stayed, and we've had that continuity throughout the entire time. I'm a very firm believer in you disc every hire that you're going to hire. And I also do the strength finders. I think between those 2 things, those are key. And then our process would be, if we have someone who we have an interest in and we need a position, the very first interaction is I'll just have a short phone conversation with them, just kind of feel them out. But then we bring them in, we have, brunch with the team. So we're throwing you in the mix. Here's all 13 of us. If you can handle that level of interaction right out of the gate, going in cold, you can probably handle anything else that's going to come up. So if that goes well, then we progress to more in-depth interviews where they're meeting myself, 2 or 3 members on the team, so on and so forth. We go through a couple of rounds of that to onboard somebody from the time we identify them to the time we actually bring them on the team and they start. It's about a 90-day process, and that's intentional. I want you to want to be here. If you don't want to be here, you're not going to stick when things get hectic and stressful.
Cool. So, okay. So let me regress for just a moment for the listener that doesn't know what DISC and Strength Finder is. I'll touch on that in some of the post-coaching commentary that I do at the end of these podcasts. But DISC is a personality assessment that is incredibly valuable and really getting an indication as to what the person's true strengths are and their blind spots. And Strengths Finder, tell us a little bit more about Strengths Finder, because I'm not quite as familiar with that. I know of it, but I don't know that much about it.
Product that I think kind of marries in well with the DISC profile. I think the DISC does a very good job of kind of identifying what makes up this person. The Strength Finder I found has been a good complement to it because it kind of helps outline what are they going to be good at, what is their more predominant trait that may come forward. So those 2 things married together, I found, give you a really accurate picture of what somebody may be and how they may show up, which depending on the role that you're hiring for, you may want someone who's going to be more aggressive, who's going to have that sales fire, versus if we're looking more at processor support roles, I don't want them to be overly aggressive. I want them to be task focused, empathetic, nurturing, because they're going to be hand-holding that client through the finish line type of thing. So I found those 2 pieces together, in addition to, the face-to-face time with the team, are invaluable to vetting hires. And knock on wood, we've been very, very lucky that we've not really had any bad hires.
Yeah. And I mean, that's where like the whole hire slow, fire fast thing is so important. I mean, I referenced it before, but I mean, far too many times I've seen people make the mistake of hiring quickly. And I've made this mistake. I actually made this mistake as recently as about 1.5 years ago. I made an abrupt hire, and 4 months later, I was back to exactly where I was before, which was needing to find somebody to fill that spot, which is not fun. I mean, there's a lot of energy that goes into hiring someone. I like this notion of, so if I heard you correctly, you have a candidate, and the first thing you do is you have a brunch and you invite them to the brunch, and you see, like, you kind of throw them into the swimming pool. It's got to be a little bit intimidating to the person. They're meeting a whole team, and like, what if they're interested?
See, that what I found is that takes away all the, the hard shell, because you go in an interview one-on-one and someone can kind of skate their way through that, I think, and put up a false version of themselves. The benefit of dumping them with the entire team does 2 things. One, it's such a overstimulated environment because you've got 13 people that work together closely. We all spend more time with each other than we do with our spouses sometimes. So you got a group of people that's fairly close knit. You're coming into that as a sometimes complete stranger, or sometimes they know people in the group. So you see very quickly how they interact. And then that also takes the pressure off of me for having to fill the void. So I can actually sit back and watch how that person interacts. And then I've got 12 other partners on the team who are also seeing how this person interacts. So you've got 13 perspectives very quickly to go, do we invest any more time in moving forward with this or not? Because that's super low level. I mean, the first phone call is 20 minutes, just, hey, how are you? What's going on? Tell me the background, yada, yada, yada. That next interview is, are you worthy or worth pursuing to go further? And if they are, then you get into the serious interviews where you really start peeling things apart. But you get a real sense of them in that first interview.
The interviews take place after the cocktail party, the brunch.
And we schedule the cocktail. We schedule that separately. So the first interaction is truly come in, meet the team. What we've typically done in the past is say, maybe bring something that you're super passionate about and present it to us. So like Trent, when he came, he really loved sailing. He presented on sailing and sailboats. Jennifer was presenting on crafting, Heather was on cooking. So, I mean, it's just, tell us a little bit about yourself and give us something that, show us your sales skills. Because whether you like it or not, we're all in sales. It doesn't matter what role you fill, everyone's in sales. So they need to be able to interact with a large degree and different people with different backgrounds. If you can't talk to people, you're not going to make it in this business.
That's outstanding. It's also putting them in a position where, like you're getting an understanding of what they're passionate about and seeing how they communicate in ways that wouldn't necessarily be so obvious, right? Like you're asking them to do something, but in the breadth of them doing what you're asking them to do, you're learning a lot of valuable things about, you're essentially interviewing them when they're presenting that one thing, even though they don't really realize it. I love how stealth that is. So, next question is regards to your day-to-day. And what's not lost on me is that there are people who listen to these types of interviews and they hear somebody that's doing 700 loans. And it can be so intimidating, right? Like if you're doing 5 loans a month right now, you're going like, I can't even fathom what the pathway is to get there. And obviously you were doing 5 loans a month at one point in time. And
I was lucky to do 1 loan a month at one point in time. So,
and your job description is continually refined over the years. So where is it at right now? Like take us into the back door of Caleb LeGrand's day at the office. Like what do you spend your time doing?
I mean, I've been fortunate enough to move into a lot more of what I want to do, which is more the consulting side. That's the part that I really, really enjoy. So I think you have to start in the beginning the way you want to end. I think you need to develop those daily disciplines early because they'll facilitate what the end is going to be. So just to weave back into the hiring thing real fast, the reason that we've not really ever made a bad hire, because I firmly believe in capacity ahead of demand. So we've always looked to go, okay, once we get above 70, 80% of the current production level of the team, we start identifying where are we getting stuck, and we start looking for that next position. That way we're not running around scrambling to go, oh my gosh, we got to hire somebody and we got to hire them now. So I think the same thing, if you're starting out, you're doing 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 10, whatever number of loans, develop those daily disciplines now, and they will only scale as you continue to grow the practice. So I still start my day really early. I start at 4 a.m. So I'll get up, do my devotions, morning meditation type of stuff. And then I'm usually going through emails, preparing the day. Any paperwork stuff is done at that time. 7 o'clock, I'll go to the gym, work out, come home, shower, change. I'll typically work from home for an hour or 2 in the mornings just to kind of get centered. And then when I get into the office, it's appointments and dealing with anything with the team for pretty much the rest of the day up until about 7 o'clock. The day is really structured in the sense I've blocked out, I call it admin time. Like if I need time to go work on a project or focus, there's a couple days a week that are blocked out for the morning because I'm a morning person. Then that way, when I come to the office, the rest of that time is free to deal with anything that may need attention, or client appointments are the biggest thing. So I still do most of the consultations with the client on the front end.
So that was the question I was going to ask you. Do you have other loan originators on your team? And of those, say, 700 transactions that you did 2 years in a row, what percentage of those people would you estimate you actually talked to and, quoted rates to and got them to say yes?
We don't have any other loan officers. So I handled almost all 700 of those. So I do have what most would consider like loan officer assistants. So Sydney and Melissa and Heather all assist on the front end with doing aspects of it. I'm the one who's primarily structuring the loan and then handing it off for, here's the strategy, here's the blueprint, let's follow through with it. So keep in mind the 650 and the 707, in that was about 200 something refis those years. That's a lot less work. It's just basically, here's your rate, here's your payment, let's go down the skids. The purchase money is where there's a lot more consultative work and structuring that loan more properly.
So it's kind of a doctor nurse analogy, right? Like, so you're the doctor that comes in, prescribes, and it's been refined over the years more and more to where less and less of the upfront process is your responsibility. It's been splintered to different people, and you're basically coming in and educating, right? Like that's the main focus of what you do.
I mean, we call it a pre-application consultation or a pack, and I'm doing truly the consult piece or the pitch, if you will, of, all right, client calls in, we've got the loan application, we've got supporting docs. And my time with you is to say, I reviewed your information. This is what we can approve you for. How do we best weave this loan into your long-term financial goals? I have some recommendations. Tell me what's important to you here as we really tailor this loan to your specific needs. close that out, issue the approval letter. And that's really the vast majority of what I'm doing beyond interacting with our referral partners and our builder accounts, making sure that we're keeping those folks happy, facilitating what they need from us, and delivering on our commitments.
How important is it in your estimation for a person in your position to have a strong opinion and to be willing to give advice to a client?
I think it's everything. I really genuinely do. I think if you're going to move beyond being a rate hack, and we all make this journey. And so for me personally, when I first got into the business, wasn't counting like, oh, I'm really savvy financially. And so I was talking with my dad, and my dad was hitting me with all these really tough questions. And I'm like, I don't know the answer to that. He said, if you're going to be good, you need to be able to answer those questions. And so just really work to refine my craft to where you need to have an opinion that's worth people waiting for. So, client calls in, it may be 24, 48 hours before we actually have that consult. So when I show up, it needs to be more than, okay, you wanted a 20% down mortgage. Here's your rate. Here's your payment. Do you have any questions? Because that's a waste of people's time. You need to show up with it. Here's how we're going to make this make sense for you. Here's how we can weave this into your long-term financial goals. We do a lot of new construction. So it's also trying to project out what's the market and the economy going to be 6, 8, 10, 12 months from now. And how do we best manage that debt between now and then before we actually really execute on something. So if you don't have an opinion of value or something worth waiting for, then you're no different than an online lender or a bank where it's just, here's your rate, here's your payment, have a nice day. I mean, that's being a mortgage advisor as opposed to just simply being someone who's a mortgage person.
Yeah, as opposed to an order taker. There's a common denominator that I'm seeing over and over in all of the people that we kind of hang out with. So Josh Metal gets up at 4 a.m. Ryan Grant gets up at 4 a.m. Michael Shane's forever gotten up at 4 a.m. I mean, these are, and I can go on and on. You get up at 4 a.m. and, there's something I want to point out. First of all, it's not by accident that and all of the wisdoms, the religious wisdoms of our time, that magical hour is 4 a.m. Priests get up and they pray at 4 a.m. Yogis in India get up at 4 a.m. There's something very special about that sacred, quiet time before the sun has come up. I've read and studied quite a bit about this. So it involves the pineal gland, which is a gland in the back of our skull. That's when the most melatonin is going through our brain, and we have the greatest mental acuity and clarity. I want you to speak a little bit to that period of time. I would imagine that block of time has got to be pretty special for you in terms of getting a lot done, both on a personal and a professional level. Would you like to comment a little bit more on that?
I just call it my magic hour. So I get more done before the world gets up around 7 or 8 o'clock than most people get done in their day. The thing that stuck with me the most out of that, there was a study, and I don't remember how long ago I read it, but they had studied, the Fortune 500 CEOs, and they had said, I'm happy in a day if I get an hour and a half of productive work done. And these are people who are paid multi-millions. They run the biggest companies. You go like, what the heck? So I just figured, all right, if I can get my day structured where I can get a lot done, it allows me to be more present during the day when people are more awake and can deal with anything that comes up that needs immediate attention, because I've done all the prep work that needs to be done in advance of that. It allows me to be able to be reactive if something that needs my attention, or to have the prime time that most clients want to meet between 9 to 5 readily available. Okay, we can slot you in. That's what helps facilitate such a high production load, because I'm able to fit in 3 or 4 appointments every single day if I need to.
Yeah, and I think that also I would have to imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's something really important about feeling accomplished, right? So if we start off our day, at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock when the world is coming at us, we run a great risk of that day ending and us feeling very defeated because we've been reacting all day. And what you're doing is you're giving yourself an opportunity every day to have some winning time where no matter what happens, no matter what comes at you, you had those 3 or 4 hours to where nobody got to you because everybody was still sleeping, and you got to get things taken care of that you really wanted to accomplish. Is that accurate for you?
I feel good because I'm already got my checklist. It's already got like maybe 20 or 40% of it done.
Yeah.
Walking into the day. And now it's like, okay, what's left would mean I need to call people or deal with appointments or things that can be done during more traditional business hours.
Cool. So what time do you end your day, by the way? Because if you start so early, do you check out at like 4 or 5 o'clock, or what time are you done working?
So typically nowadays, I mean, the last 2 years were just insane. So I mean, it was super late hours. In a more normal period of time, I try to stop around 6:30 and go home at that point in time.
What time you go to bed?
Somewhere between 8:39.
Got it. So you're still getting your 7 hours in. That's cool. Okay.
Very much so. I
All right.
can't operate on much less than that.
I was starting to worry about you there for a minute, man. I want to make sure you're getting enough sleep.
No, no. If I only get like 5 or 6 hours, I'm not super awesome the next day.
I need at least 8, man. I'm getting old. My body doesn't produce as much melatonin as yours. Okay, so let's talk about your business philosophy. What is your top business philosophy or mantra, if you will? Like, do you have one that you think is really important for people to understand?
I think it's just provide value. So I'm very much a value oriented person myself. So that doesn't necessarily mean monetarily. When I'm personally going out to buy something or research something, I'm looking for either the best bang for the buck or, best advice. It's just bring value. So same thing on the client side or the consultative side of the business is provide value and be able to meet a client where they're at. It could be something as basic as someone who just needs help understanding credit to the far more sophisticated client who's got multiple businesses, multiple properties. They think they've been through this 9,000 times. And what I found in my experiences, even those clients who've done this 1,000 times, there's still opportunities to provide a high level of service and a high level of value with a strong financial opinion that they may not even have thought about. And so it's no different than being that financial advisor just through the lens of a mortgage, saying, I'm going to help look at your finances. And I'm someone at this stage in my career, I talk to each year somewhere in the ballpark of around 1,300 people that want to borrow money, sometimes more, sometimes less. So I've gotten a lot of repetitions in to where I can see, hey, here's things that you may not have thought of because I've gotten to see what this looks like 20 years down the road of either validating your strategy, you're doing everything right, here's a couple things to think about, or this doesn't end well because I've seen what the outcome of this will be based upon interaction with other clients. And here's some things you may want to consider. So that experience of bringing that wide swath of looking at so many individual financial profiles really has been valuable. I've never had a client where we've ended a consult and they said, this was a complete and utter waste of my time. This was dumb. I'm never doing this again. They almost always end, this was extremely helpful. Thank you so much for pointing that out. I'm really glad we did this, even if there was reluctance going into it.
So let's peel that back a little bit more because there's a theme that's starting to develop here. Adding value. You haven't necessarily used the term financial advisor, but that's absolutely what you're describing. You're willing to have an opinion. You're wanting to make sure that when you meet with someone that they leave that conversation having value provided to them, a greater breadth of education. So what are the things that you've done over the years? I mean, you talk about the repetitions, and I don't want to underestimate or even skirt past that. I mean, you talk to 1,300 people a year, you're going to get damn good at your scripting. You're going to see so many scenarios. You're going to be that much more valuable. But there are two things that I would have to imagine that listeners might be going to. Like, number one is, how do I get in front of 1,300 people here? And obviously that didn't happen overnight. So I'd like to just have a little bit of an understanding of what's transpired over the course of your career. If you could give us a little bit of a synopsis of what took place to get you to a position to be in front of that many people. And secondly, and equally important, is what have you done over time to become so educated, to be able to be confident, to be that advisor to them? Do you study certain, literature, et cetera? I mean, if you can go into some depth on those two, that'd be great.
I'll start with the second question because I feel like that's a little bit easier. I think it's just like anything else. You've got to invest in yourself. So when I first got into this industry, and you got to remember, I left what was considered a safe job. I was on track to make partner because I started out in the Big Four. If I stayed there 12 years, I would make partner. That's a very safe, very comfortable lifestyle. So, 4 years or 5 years into being an accountant, I'm looking at my young wife and going, hey, I want to jump out of this and go into something that who the heck knows if it's going to work out. But I told her, I said, one of two things are going to happen. I'm either going to be the biggest success or the biggest failure in the mortgage industry. Time will tell which one of the two it is. And by the grace of God, so far, it's been a pretty good run. But when I first got in, I immediately went and sought out the CMPS information. That was incredibly helpful. That is something, if you want to get a very strong financial base, it was that. I was right in the heyday of Loan Toolbox, so your old product. That was invaluable for someone who's new, just going in and going, I've always tried to model successful people. People have said over the years, success leaves clues, and it's very true. And there's really not anything new under the sun. There's just variations of this may work differently for my market, my area, my practice versus what someone else does, but it's just a spin on what someone else is doing. So investing in yourself to get that knowledge. I mean, I read all the financial books. Life and whole life insurance was a big thing back at that time, and everybody was talking about it. So I went and got everything I could on that to understand it. Getting into financial advisors and picking their brain and going, what are you doing? How do these strategies work? If I'm talking to a client and they've got $400,000 and they're buying a $600,000 house and they want to put all the money down, what could you do differently with that? So just asking questions. I think you need to read broadly to have an exposure to a diversity of opinions. I think you need to be very careful on who you learn from and who you actually follow, because there's a lot of people that are just like the old gold rush days, they're just selling the shovels. They don't actually own the mine, run the mine, or ever done that. So I think you've got to really invest in yourself and invest in that financial opinion to really have a true understanding of that. Then to answer the first question, it didn't happen overnight. And so I've always looked at myself as more of an educator and a very process-based operator in the mortgage space. Like, there are thousands of people who are better salespeople than I am. Like I so had over the years worked at a couple of different companies and had a couple of different coworkers, super outgoing people, really friendly. You throw them in a room, they leave with 12 friends, 6 business cards, and a couple of deals. I'm the guy who's kind of sitting in the corner of my drink going like, I need to go talk to somebody. But what has built is it's become that flywheel. So as you're adding value, going into every transaction, going, I'm here to help you, and I want to do the best I can for you. And I'm going to work on my skills as a mortgage operator to up-level my opinion. And thankfully in my market, I don't have to be that much smarter than a lot of people. So maybe that's partly why I've had such success just with where I'm located, because we are a little more blue collar than, say, like some of the white collar areas. So the level of financial intellect doesn't have to be like super esoteric. Like, we're not getting into weird stuff that you would go like, I don't really know if I have an opinion on that. So that allows me to give a high level of value to those clients, and then just builds on itself. And if you follow up with the disciplines, I'm going to follow up, I'm going to follow through, I'm going to do the things that we all know we need to do, it just compounds over time and you get a reputation. I'm also in a fairly small market. So we work within about a 2-hour radius of our office. And in that radius, there's only about 1.8 million people that are serviceable. So word spreads fast and allows us to become the big fish, small pond.
You're being awfully humble. You do well in any market, including white collar markets. There's no question about that. You're definitely one of the most well-versed and articulate loan originators I've ever met. And I've met a lot of them. I've probably met more of them than most people have, for sure. But what I'm hearing there, to just kind of peel that back a little bit and tease it apart, is it's been grassroots. It's not like some quick fix. It's like, let's string all of these philosophies together before we move into another subject matter. Add value, okay? Educate yourself, have a solid team, do right by people, have your heart in the right place, which is my job, is to really help people here. And what will happen is, over time, no matter what market you're in, you're going to start to develop a really good reputation, because people are going to really appreciate the time that they spent with you and the job that you did for them and how your team serviced them. And they're going to just keep coming back, and they're going to refer people to you. And maybe the most important thing in all of that gets missed, Caleb, and I would imagine you'll agree with this, is that when that starts happening, your confidence in you starts to grow. So what you're bringing to the conversation is a greater version of you, which is a confident version of you, somebody who has had social proof that your wisdom is valuable, and then you're even more willing to offer it. You're helping people even more, versus the antithesis, which is the loan originator who's kind of second guessing themselves. They haven't invested in themselves. They kind of know they don't know shit. So they're kind of faking it. They get an educated borrower on the other end, and they're a little bit nervous because that person might know more than them. I mean, there's all kinds of other dynamics that occur versus the one that you've created for yourself. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, 100% agree. And then I think the refinement of that is how do I stay in that lane or that zone more frequently? And that's where team comes in, because then you start going, okay, I think the math and the metrics that I use is every 5 units requires an additional team partner to be able to provide excellent service and an excellent experience. So once you get to a certain point, you go, okay, I need to go hire somebody, and you just identify where. and you just start shedding those things that, okay, that takes me out of being able to do more of that. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I don't do things I don't enjoy, because I do. And there's still paperwork that I have to do and things like that. But I get to spend a high percentage of my time doing the thing that I do well and the thing that lights me up. So I finish, a consultation with a client. I'm usually like skipping down the hallway, super happy because made a difference. And I think you have to go into it truly being okay with, I'm here to add value. I'm here to make a difference, whether we transact together or not. I want to make sure I've done the best for you. So I've taken multiple appointments over the years where we finish and I go, you actually really don't need my services. Here's the best thing for you to do. And this would best help you. And staying in integrity with that authenticity is key, because then it truly becomes, people have no hesitation referring you. Just call him. He'll be able to help you with whatever it is. He'll be able to help. Just call him. And that, of course, is the ideal situation you want to be in, because then you just get to stay in helping people mode, as opposed to having to go out and be in hunter mode, where that desperation can come across a little bit. And that's, there's obviously times where business ebbs and flows, but just staying in that moment of, I want to be consistent. I want to add value. I want to help and do the best I can do because it's the right thing to do. Whether we make money or not on the transaction with actually doing something is less important. I mean, obviously we need to be profitable and all that good stuff, because that facilitates the whole shooting match. But you want to make sure you're helping people from a place of genuine, I'm here to help you.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned that. I mean, I think right now is a particularly precarious time, and the 1st of June of 2022, when we're doing this recording, where businesses slowed down, loan originators are starting to get a little bit worried, and that's when scripts get developed that can be questionable in terms of integrity, and that always concerns me. And I'm proud to say that I never did that. I absolutely followed the same path that you're describing, which was to stay, even in those times where it can be super seductive to get a little greasy with your scripting and think what the future holds and really sell the pie in the sky to the borrower. Like I never did that. And I slept really easy at night. And I know far too many loan originators that would do that, and then it would backfire on them and their reputation would be damaged. And if you don't have your reputation, bro, you don't have anything, right?
Yeah. You have to start over from scratch. And it's the old saying, it takes, thousands of transactions to build, one to run. So, I mean, it's too hard earned to give away for any one individual transaction or one singular deal. And everybody's like, how do you sleep? I sleep really well at night because I've never lied to anybody in terms of a transaction. I always try to do the right thing. And that way I don't have to make something up when I come back to interact with that client again. And then what's been really awesome is they'll remember you. I mean, we've got clients that'll call from 10, 11 years ago and say, hey, we had a great conversation. I trust you. I mean, there's no better feeling that I can think of when a client from that long ago who, some of these, I wasn't as good of an operator back then as I am now, where we're not as good with the follow-up. Somebody remembers you from 10 or 11 years ago, comes back out of the blue and said, you did a great job. I want you to help me with this next house. Thank you. I mean, that's validation.
Man, the word trust is such a powerful word when it comes to the profession that you're in too, right? Like, I mean, that actually, I've never even thought about that before, but that should be the ultimate goal of every loan originator, is to build trust with their referral partners, with their borrowers, with their, with everybody. I mean, if they build trust, that's like building an annuity income, right? Trust is an annuity. Like, people always say that the mortgage business is transactional. It doesn't have to be, not if you're a trust builder. Wow. I have to do some journaling on that one.
That's a writer downer.
Yeah. I'm going to do some contemplating on that. All right. So basics versus fundamentals. Recently, we were together in Northern California for our L360 event, and you talked a little bit about your philosophy on the difference between basics and fundamentals. And I'd like you to break that down for the listener, please.
I think there's just a key difference between the two. So I think, basics are those things that you have to know how to do them, and they facilitate being able to be in whatever industry or career that you're in. But the repetition or the enhancement or the practice of those steps doesn't make you any better at your job. So in our industry, being able to pull credit or being able to enter an application into a loan operating system or an LOS, knowing how to do those, you got to pretty much know how to do those. If you're going to say you're going to be an originator, it's like actually in the description of what we were supposed to do as a licensed person, but practicing that isn't going to make you any better. Fundamentals will be those things upon which the foundation of your practice and your career is built upon, so that the daily discipline and execution of those enhances both your skill sets, taking you from novice to mastery, and also furthers the goals of building a practice upon which you do get that continuity or that annuity of people are calling you. You know, when I first got into the business, it's like, oh, it'd be amazing if I could walk into the door and and this is, you know, back when they were still faxing them, loan applications would be faxed in and I could just get started. You know, nowadays it's online. So that's the goal. Is I don't wake up going, man, I wonder if we're going to get a loan today. It's okay. This has already come in and this is what we're doing to work on this and get that taken care of. So the fundamentals are those things that further that goal of whatever you want your practice to be defined as. So I think you got to get clear on that for yourself as an operator, work backwards from that, and then interweave that into those daily disciplines and those daily habits, focusing on those things. The basics are things you learn, and then you move past them, and most likely will assign that to a team partner or something of that nature, or technology, whatever you want to do to facilitate it. But the fundamentals, you need to practice that daily to increase your skill set.
So in your vernacular, what would you list off like 3 fundamentals just to make sure that everybody that's listening is getting the
fundamentals would be, you know, having the financial education to have a very high value consultation with a client. Like that's key number 1 for me. Then number 2 would be interacting with your referral partners, whether that be realtors, financial planners, divorce attorneys, CPAs, whomever, that you're interacting with them to make sure that you're facilitating their business. You know, how can I help you grow your business? Because what's good for you is good for me. And then for me, it's also making sure that I'm taking care of our internal team, our internal partners here with the partners that are on the team, of how can I help you grow, find satisfaction, development, things of those things. So that would be like the 3 key fundamentals that I really try to spend the majority of my time on.
Yeah, that's super important for everybody to hear. And you referenced as a part of the education piece, CMPS. Jabron Nicholas is a friend and a great guy. And I know that our mutual good friend, Craig Strent, is a big proponent of CMPS as well. So that's something that everybody should be taking down as a note, as something to take a look at. Because if you, as I said before, like if you don't know what you need to know, you're going to have call reluctance, and you're definitely not going to be as good as you're capable of being. So investing in yourself is super important, especially right now, when you're competing against large order taking operations like, Quicken, et cetera. I mean, what are you doing to separate yourself from them? One of the things that you can do to separate yourself is wisdom that they don't possess with their call centers. So we're going to transition now to the big topic. And we're going to spend some time on this and I'm super excited to talk to you about it. So I'm going to paint a little bit of a picture for the audience so they have an understanding. So back in 1998, I came to an awareness when my loan production, actually it was in early 99, when I came to the awareness that my loan production was dropping dramatically because rates had gone up, that I needed to develop a system for customer service, and that I have one shot every time I do a loan for somebody. And that shot is to blow them away or not. And there's no zeros. It's a zero-sum game. There's no in between. They're either wowed or they're not wowed. And that if I can wow people, that I could create an annuity income for myself. So I developed this thing with my team called the Perfect Loan Process. Perhaps some of you listeners have heard of it before. Then we fast forward, till I'm a lot older, and it's like 2011 or 2012. And we're at my Leadership 360 retreat in Costa Rica. Caleb comes. He's doing 15 to 18 loans a month at the time. And one of the things that we went over on retreat was the Perfect Loan Process. And as you probably are not going to be surprised by me having listened to the first 40 minutes or so of this interview, Caleb's not the kind of guy that messes around. He hears an idea of something that he wants to take action on, and he takes action on it at an extremely high level. And you are a master of, or you may not, you're a humble guy, so you may not consider yourself to be a master, but you're as good as anybody I know at the implementation of the Perfect Loan Process. You've developed your own version with your team. You continue to evolve it and modify it. Let's just first start by you defining what the Perfect Loan Process is in your vernacular. Why is it important? And why do you believe so much in it?
I think it's a system for selling. I mean, I look at the Perfect Loan Process, which we call ours Better Loan Process, because I know yours was perfect. Mine's not. So it's constantly evolving. So it's Better Loan Process because we're always working on it, but it's the core nucleus of what we are. It's how we approach a loan. It's our system for selling, interacting with our referral partners, interacting with clients. Because if you don't have that approach, you're then going to be subject to your client's desire for how they want a loan. And depending on who they worked with last, it may be a horrible transaction. You're also going to be subject to your referral partner's process for how they want to handle a transaction. And that could be good or bad. And what I have found to be true for myself over the years of having that system for selling, or the system we're going to run the loan through from start to finish, attracts other top producers. Most of the we work with in our market, let's just say of the top 10 realtors, we work with about 6 of them. So we've got a lot of those top hitters that crave that consistency because they're not babysitting the transaction. I did my part. It's moved to Caleb's team. They're going to follow through, and we're going to get to the desired outcome, which is close on time, raving fan. Let's go rinse and repeat. And, back to what we were just talking about, every loan should produce another at bat. And then from there, it's just a question of how many can I feed into the hopper at the top end to spit out whatever you need to for the back end. And you just do the metrics of, okay, I'm going to convert X percentage. I'm going to close X amount. If I want to increase business, I need to get this many more leads from this many more referral partners. It can get extremely formulaic. Not that you don't want to take the fun out of it, but it can be very formulaic where you can build that practice by design and by demand. And it's just a matter of scaling it up or down as you see fit. I mean, obviously in times like this where it's a little scarcer, but I would argue it's not really a scarce market. It's just, we had an amazing 2 years where we didn't have to do anything other than answer the phone. Now we're having to go dust off those sales skills. And that's where having that system for selling and that recognition in the market is key, because the business continues to get fed into the hopper.
So glad that you defined it as a system for selling. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody else define it as such before, but I wholeheartedly agree. And I also know that you and I also agree that the perfect loan process is your marketing.
Absolutely, 100%. I'm a one-trick pony. That's all I do.
So let me just kind of synthesize this just a little bit further for everybody. So I'm going to say it in a little bit different way, but Caleb and I are totally on the same page. So think of if you had a system that started with the time that the person first engaged you, whether it be electronically or via telephone, they call in, they need a loan, and all the way through after the loan closes, and every single step in between that ensures that you're proactively, and such a key word is proactively, providing phenomenal service and education to that borrower, to where at the end of that transaction, they're going to be like, wow, that was way better than I thought it would be. And I'd for sure come back, and I have no problem referring people to them. And along the way, you've identified the opportunities to refer them out to people and or sell to other potential future referral partners. And if you had that so dialed in and tight, and you really worked it, and your team was well oiled with it, it does become like you're a life insurance agent, to where, like, you almost, as you said, formulaically can be rest assured that you're going to do a certain number of loans next year just by the sheer amount of referrals that you're going to get from people that were impressed by the services that you provided. So let's start at the basics. You come back from Costa Rica. How did you develop it?
I hate starting with a blank page. So I would say for myself, I'm not one who is terribly creative in the sense of, I'm going to sit down with a blank page and I'm going to write up all this wonderful stuff. I prefer to start with something from someone else. So swiping and adapting legally, ethically, morally, getting permission and all that fun stuff, but taking it and then going in and putting my own spin on it. So for coming back from Costa Rica, I'd already been exposed to the perfect loan process from Loan Toolbox days in 2006. So had already started building a version of that, I would say, from leaving Costa Rica and getting to interact with a lot of other high-end top producers, the creme de la creme, allowed me to go, I could shorten my learning curve, because I could ask, what did you do? Or how did this happen for you? Not make those same mistakes, and then take that back into my own practice and go, I'm okay with doing that and I can do that, or I'm not okay with doing that and I will not do that. So your hell yeses and your hell nos, getting very clear on those, and then just go through a loan. I mean, if you've done a few transactions, you have a pretty good idea. I would argue that probably 80 to 90% of what we all do as originators is basically the same in terms of the process. We get an app, we gather some stuff, we decision the loan, we fund it, so on and so forth. So those steps are, not like, oh my gosh, it should be, okay, how are we going to do these? How are we going to do it efficiently? We're always looking at it through the lens of, how can I reduce the burden on the client? And how can I reduce the burden on the referral partner? You want to be simple to do business with. You want to be easy to transact with, because if you can do those two things, that's where you get to become the man, the myth, the legend of, oh, it was so easy. I just signed a couple of documents. We went to closing. It was bing, bang, boom. that's what you want, because the counter story to that is mortgages are horrible. It's so much paperwork. They ask for the same thing 16 times. The underwriter peels the loan apart. It's just miserable, and they never close on time, and the numbers are always different. So just taking all those narratives and going, how can I design a process that eliminates those biggest pain points, which is we call it the big gather of all the crap you got to get for a loan, nailing the numbers to make sure that they are as bang on as we can get from the first interaction with the client. And then whatever you do, don't miss a closing. That's really the three things we do as a team. And then we just center everything around how do we build the steps to facilitate that, and then make it scalable of when we're doing 5 loans, 10 loans, 20 loans, 30 loans. I mean, our peak month in the heyday, we did 82 loans in 1 month. And that really did push us. I mean, that was a lot for a team of 13 to get done and close it all. And that's where you just go back and go, okay, what didn't work then? Or where did we hit log jams? Where can we remove the friction to facilitate better efficiencies, better client experience? Because, even at that level, 82 units a month, I would say our customer service slipped a little bit. We weren't as proactive as I want us to be. So it's taking a step back and go, what did we lack in those months to be able to better facilitate it? Because if it works at that level, it easily works at the 20 and 30 or 15 or whatever level. I mean, it should be like super overkill for that. It's like bringing a bazooka to a knife fight. That way it's got that elasticity to scale up when those big production months hit. Because the bad thing about this business, it's not like you get to pick the month that you're going to be busy. So you got to scale and be ready when that happens to hit it, to take as many loans out of the market as possible at that time.
So the three things that you identified, I want to just play color commentator on that a little. And the next question is going to be the advice that you would have. So get ready for this as to how to go about implementing a process like this. But number one, gathering documentation. Okay. So having the right people on your team to be able to intuit exactly what an underwriter is going to want to see, not just what the findings are, because there's always the findings and then there's what's underneath the findings once you provide the documentation. So really knowing how to pre-underwrite a file, because it's horrible customer service when you have to go back to somebody a second and a third time, especially when they're under high stress. They got their moving vans in the driveway. You got a ticking time bomb that is the closing and the interest rate lock and all that stuff. That's like number one place where deals just don't provide great services when that's not handled. Number two is the financial piece. So not just making sure that you're tight on, your education of rates and programs and all that kind of stuff, but also the closing statement and the final numbers. So there's no surprises, there's no adjustments. And then lastly is making sure, like you said, that you close on time. What you're essentially describing there with all three of those is removing the stress and the anxiety from the equation. If you can remove the stress and the anxiety from the equation by having a system for serving people proactively, then the result is going to be, hey, that was pretty damn good. And I'd do this again with them. That was way better than I expected. Right?
Yeah, I call it going into lockdown mode because, think about it, we're dealing with family, we're dealing with home, we're dealing with money. It's the three things people will literally go to war and kill each other over. And we're doing all of that in a singular transaction. And it goes back to the trust. If you break the trust and breach trust, clients go into a lockdown mode where everything is super painful. They're questioning everything. If you can remove that level of stress, build that high level of trust and reduce the frustration, they're less in tune. And I don't mean that in a negative way. They're not like picking every little piece apart because there's an enormous amount of data that goes into every single loan transaction, and it just goes through much smoother. And their perception of that deal was, I thought going to the dentist was going to be horrible, but it was really kind of great. He was great, had great bedside manner. I was in and out and it was wonderful. Same thing with the mortgage. It wasn't as bad as what everybody sells, and in and out. And then that allows for that high level of repeatability because you're not afraid to call that client when rates drop because I didn't do a shitty job the first time. It's like, hey, I'm going to make sure that this was a great experience. And by the way, Tim, we did a great job last time for you. Rates have dropped. I've been monitoring the loan. Want to let you know, we'd be happy to take care of this for you. We've got a lot of the documentation we need from your last loan already. We can save you X amount of dollars. Would you like to do it? Sure. I mean, it's just an easy pickup for that next transaction. Or when they're ready to buy that next house, which that's been the bit of a change or my career. We've got clients that are coming back at a high level of frequency, buying another property after only like 2 or 3 years. So it just spins over a lot faster. And if you do a great job the first time, you get them the second time.
Great. So what advice do you have for someone wanting to implement it? I'm going to go ahead and provide to the listener a copy of my revised perfect loan process that we continue to update in the L360 family. So they're going to have that roadmap that you're talking about. It's not like they're going to be starting from scratch. So what advice do you have though? Because there is a gap to bridge between looking at the document and instilling it into your team. And it's a gap a little bigger than the Grand Canyon, isn't it? So how would you advise on that?
I would say be prepared that it is a significant investment in time and patience, but it's such a huge payday. So I think it goes back to, you need to decide what you want your practice to be. If you want to be the guy that's the sales guy and you're going to be running around hunting for deals all the time, you can certainly be successful. There's a lot of people in our industry that do that. If you want to be the person that attracts business, I think focusing on the perfect loan process or better loan process or your system for selling is the other side of that. And so it moves to becoming that attractant. In terms of implementing it, don't start from a blank page. Don't invest all that brain space. I liken it to getting the rocket ship off the ground. A rocket burns 80% of its fuel just getting launched. And then, once it's in orbit, it doesn't have to use as much fuel. So getting that launched is the key. So start with the L360 product. It's good. I mean, you're talking about something that's been vetted over the years from a lot of very top shelf talent. No offense to anybody, but you're probably not going to come up with something earth shattering that hasn't already been addressed in there. So take that to start with, then just modify it to your own personality. And I would say implement it in stages. You're not going to get the whole thing full Monty and the first pass. So maybe you just start with, I work from the back forward because I was on the front end in the origination process, and I can go, okay, I'm good enough that I can wing it a little bit until we get everything dialed in system wise. So I started from closing, backing up to underwriting, backing up to processing, backing up to disclosures, and then backing up to the lead piece. So the lead piece was the last thing I put in because typically the originator is going to be some of the greater talent within the team. They shouldn't need as much training as perhaps other team partners in that system may need. So just starting from that end forward and go, okay, we're going to work on having a really good closing process, because people will remember how you finish. I mean, if you're going to focus on anything, finish strong. You can suck in the beginning, and if you finish well, that's all they remember. So that's where made sure that we're going to finish super strong. We're going to be the best closing people we can have. So, turn the docs fast, get the numbers out early, get all that right, put that system in place. Then we move back into processing and underwriting and go, all right, what can we do to minimize the crap we asked for? So really working with our underwriting people to go, do we really need this? Let's stop the warm fuzzy stuff. Let's follow guides. It's got to be sellable, closable, and stay sold. But let's not go ask for a bunch of stuff we don't really need. And then putting the systems in place. That's where also I think it's important to have some continuity with the people you work with, because you build that level of trust with underwriters. So when we work with an underwriter now, they're not going like, okay, how are they trying to skate by? It's like, okay, they're coming at this from a file, from a place of integrity. They're going to disclose what I need to know, and you can get through much quicker. So one of the things I'm very proud of, the result of our perfect loan process or better loan process, we've got about an 87% one-touch rating in underwriting. I mean, we get through the first pass. So the benefit of that is speed. We can smoke through a loan. We get a high level of facilitation with getting things out the door because they know they're not going to have to touch it a bunch of times. So that's just the end result of that, is it builds and compounds. You get really efficient in the loan. Your marketing expense goes way down too, because think about it. You're not having to go buy a bunch of business like people paying for Zillow stuff and co-marketing and all this other stuff. If the business is coming in, we're pipeline protection. I'm paycheck protection to a realtor or a builder. It's going to come, we're going to spit it out. It's going to be a great result. And I'm going to go get you another one, so you don't have to go hunt for that transaction. But start small, start with the end in mind, work your way from whatever side of it you want to work. If you're weak on the front end, maybe you start there and work your way back. I wanted to finish strong, and I worked my way back from the end.
So that's something I want to dive a little deeper on that you just said, which is the subject matter of one touch, right? So there's always this initial perspective on the PLP when people look at it and they say, well, geez, like you had your processors do so much stuff. Like there's no way that my processor has enough time to do all of these cool things like, cross-selling and taking time to talk to the borrower for 10 minutes and ask them how their weekend was and sending out a personal handwritten note card and all these different things. And I'm like, they have the time to do it if it's one touch. See, that's the thing, is that when you don't do the job right on the front end, okay, and you don't collect all the documentation up front, and you don't do the proper analysis, and you don't have a thorough conversation with the client to where they're fully bought in and they don't have 17 questions that they're harboring that they've stuffed down and they're going to come leaking out over the next 2 weeks. All of that time that you spend fielding those questions or going back to them a second and third time and trying to chase down documentation you should have asked for the first time, all of that goes away times however many loans you have in your pipeline. And now you can replace that time, that free time, with all of the money-making activities at the moments of power that you have. So let's talk about the two areas where you have money-making activities. You're incredibly well scripted. And I also think that you guys do a really great job as a team in marketing with some very humorous stuff, et cetera. So take them whatever order you want. I want you to identify, please, a couple of times during your process where you seize the moment of power and you utilize proper selling, because you said it's a sales process, and proper marketing to generate new business and create future business based upon the marketing you're doing.
I think the first place you have that is in that initial interaction. So the benefit of the perfect loan process is you end up with a high level of unattached leads. And what I mean by that is what I have found in following that system is we get a lot of referrals very early in the process, which if you want the best marketing strategy to go get business, turn an approved client over to a realtor partner, you're done. That doesn't happen. So we get the opportunity to refer out to our core partners anywhere between 3 to 5 transactions pretty consistently on a monthly basis. And it's just very simply asking at the end of that consultation. So, we've provided value, we've built trust. And it's just, Tim, are you working with a realtor locally? And, sometimes the answer is yes. And if it's somebody that we've done business with, we'll reinforce that. If it's not somebody we haven't done business with or we don't know them, it may just be, well, would you be open to a second opinion? We work with a lot of the top realtors in our market. And I think it's really important that you work with a really well prepared realtor in the current market, especially as strong and as hot as it is. We'll make sure you're working with somebody who can help get your offer accepted that works in the price point that you're looking in, because somebody who sells above you is not going to be really attentive to your needs because they're going to think you're not worth their time. And somebody who sells below you, what you're looking at, won't really know what to look for on those higher end properties. So be happy to make a connection with the local realtor if you'd like. And, I'd say 80% of the time they say yes. And then that gives us the ability to insert a referral partner. And then I've got pipeline protection at that point because I'm still subject to all the same things another originator is. We got a client who goes out, they find their own realtor, that realtor may have a desire to cross-sell their lending partner. So at the 11th hour, after they've done all the work, now it just turns into a knife fight over rate because that's all anybody can offer at the end of the transactions. Well, I'll do everything Caleb said. We'll just do it cheaper. So it's trying to prevent getting into that knife fight. So it's protecting my own pipeline. And then that really builds that strong base with that referral partner where you're sending business, legally and ethically back and forth between one another.
Two things. One is I want everyone to take note of the simplicity of that script. It's just a simple question. It's not overly complex. It's not something you need to be afraid of. It's the willingness to be an advisor and to say, if you're open to a second opinion, I'd really like to make an introduction for you. And then the second thing I want to point out is that I was thinking that maybe some of you may have had a difficult time connecting the dots on the math that he just gave. So he said between 3 and 5 a month that he's able to refer out to real estate agents. And that when he delivers that script, somewhere around 80% of the time, they say, sure, I'd love to have an introduction and have a second opinion. You may be like, well, wait a minute. How does that math work when he's doing 70 deals a month and he's talking to 1,300 people? Remember that a significant percentage of people he's talking to are coming via referral from a realtor. So he's not delivering that script when he gets a referral from a realtor. So he's delivering it. He's delivering it every time he has a deal that is not referred to him by a real estate agent. And roughly 80% of the time, he's making an introduction. And whether they close with that realtor or not, or go with their original realtor, doesn't really matter because he gets credit for being a conduit and a referrer of business. So before we transition to marketing, do you have any other scripts that you'd like to share that are a part of your perfect loan process that you think are powerful?
I think that's the most powerful one. And I think the key is there is where it's delivered. And it works for its simplicity because you've built massive value, you've built massive trust, you've shown that you're willing to do the work. So the concept of reciprocity comes in very easily there. I've done all of this for you, Tim. without asking for any money from you. In return, all I'm asking you for is the opportunity to better help you with the goal we're trying to accomplish, which you want to buy a house. I want to put you with the best realtor who's going to get this thing consummated for both of us. So I think that confidence in being able to ask for that at that time, because I didn't used to do that. Like I would, I'd be like, I don't want to be pushy. You're doing yourself a disservice because you've done all this work and you invested all this time. You as an originator need to protect that effort and connect that person with someone who's going to be in alignment with you in the practice. Then there's continuity of experience too, because if they go work with some random realtor, it may be a completely different interaction with that individual versus what they're used to with us. And honestly, that's been one of the best things, because the work with somebody who's unprofessional, and then we get to stand in stark contrast to that and like, oh my gosh, we love you guys. We don't ever want to use these people ever again. So I think that's really the most powerful one there. And then I think it's just follow through with everything else you're going to say. I mean, I know you keep saying scripting. I just view it as you make your commitment and you honor the commitment to the best of your ability. And when you can't meet that commitment, you immediately reach out with humility and truthfulness and just recommit. And, Tim, we couldn't make this because of this and this. I'm not making excuses. It's my responsibility. You've hired me to do this. Here's what we can do. Is that an okay, acceptable alternative? Or is there something else I can do to help make this right? And if you're show up that way, most people aren't assholes. I mean, there's a few every now and then we all run into, and those clients go, please don't work with them again. But by and large, most people respond to that, and they respond to it well. And it gives you an opportunity to fix it, because it's not that we're perfect. We all make mistakes. It's how you fix your mistakes that separates you from the pack.
Yeah, that's so important. And most loan originators come from so much fear and insecurity that they run from the problem. And all that does is make the problem just blow up and make it a lot bigger. So proactively owning the error and providing solutions at that time is super, super important. I'm really glad that you brought that up. How about marketing? So, tell us about some of the things that you guys do consistently. And I really want to emphasize the word consistently. One of the things that popped into my head just now is that, some of these things that we're talking about, you may be doing as a listener already, but the question is, are you doing them as a part of a system that it just happens every time? It's not like when you remember to do it or when you feel like it'll work. It's like you do it every time, and you will be thrilled with the results, and you'll get really good at what you're doing because of the repetitions. So from a marketing perspective, what are some things that you do during the loan process, from start to finish, that market to that borrower that's in process that you think result in an enhanced experience and repeat business and referrals?
I just think it's the timeliness of it. I mean, so everything we do, I've had people comment over the years ago, that's no magic to that. There's not. I've never pretended like it was. I think the keys are the consistency. And I think you got to make people laugh. If you're going to market to them, it doesn't need to be like over the top crazy, but the consistent theme for our team is, very professional, great communication, really know their stuff. So when we market to them, I want to provide a balance to that of, and they're still human beings. They're kind of funny and that type of thing. So when a client applies, we get a loan in process and they're under contract. So I'm talking client who's in contract, moving within 30 days. We send them, it's a Southern word called a certsy. And so it just means a little gift. It's got labels to label your boxes for what room you're going to stick stuff in, a marker. And then we made some custom tape, and we had everybody on the team come up with something funny, like, oh, this is really heavy, or blah, 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 blah. And it just makes them laugh. It gives them that moment of levity where, these guys aren't all buttoned up and polished all the time. And then, post-closing, they get an address stamper. We send them either a Monopoly or Scrabble gift, which is like the really nice boxed version of it. It looks like a book. And we send them a pizza gift card, saying, hey, this is your game night, because that's kind of come back in vogue. We want to help you build memories with your new house. We got a little card in there that tells a story about how one of the partners on the team, how they played this and the memories it founded for them. So it's making that human connection and making sure that it stays consistent, because the branding is consistent throughout, like the boxes we send, the branding that we use, it shows up the same way every single time to build and compound on that. We send out the meet the team in the beginning, again, creating that human bond and that human element of, hey, this is what we do on our free time, those type of things. So none of it is overly complex. The consistency of it is what builds, because it goes back to Darren Hardy's Compounding Effect, which is a great book I read a long time ago, and I'd highly recommend it. It's all those little actions that compound and build over time to create this monstrosity. And one of my favorite quotes is, little hinges swing big doors. So you put all those steps in place, and any one individual step, it's probably not earth shattering in and of itself, but the entirety of it in its whole results in what we want: timely closing, raving fans, thrilled referral partners. And then it's just how many times can you rinse and repeat?
Do you still send out, like at one point in time, you had the bag that was kind of like your team brochure. Do you still have a team brochure? What do you
That's
do to
to meet
introduce?
the team in the beginning. We send that. Now that's where, they apply. We send that to kind of humanize it. It's got some pictures of everybody in the team. Like I'm on there with my wife, water skiing, so they can see the opposite side of this buttoned up professional. Same thing for all the team partners. Just kind of walks them through, hey, this is who's going to be helping you. The CertC gift goes out under contract. And then we've got the post-closing stuff. We do the home bot because that's been really powerful. And we do the closing gift. I mean, we're not really doing anything that's like over the top magical. We do birthday cards, and we always try to do something funny. So like we did a 70s shoot, everybody dressed up for the 70s. When COVID happened, we did the whole COVID Zoom call thing with people in their masks and face cream and all of that. So just trying to go very polar opposite of what that may be. And then we send out pokes to our partners. Like when COVID hit, this is one I'm probably the most proud of. Morgan on our team is our marketing manager, and she found a picture of toilet paper cake. And I was like, oh, we got to send that. So we found a lady here locally. We made, I think, 50 of those toilet paper cakes. We sent them out to referral partners and said, we want to send you the most valuable thing we can think of, toilet paper. And it was right in the height of COVID where nobody could get it. And people just laughed about it. There was pictures all over Facebook and stuff like that. So it's just being timely, being relevant. Don't take yourself so seriously. You don't want to go so far to the opposite end where you're lewd or crude, or it's so like, that's just totally out of character and I feel awkward. Just that was super funny, and we moved on.
So making sure that your team members are connected to them is really, really important, because it makes their job easier, right? Like if you humanize your team members, then it's a lot harder to be pissed off at somebody that you know than it is somebody you don't know.
And you know what they look like, you know their name.
Yeah. So you said, I was going to ask you the question, what is your favorite quote? Is it the Darren Hardy quote, or is there another quote that's your favorite quote?
I mean, I'm a huge fan of Jocko Wilkins, discipline equals freedom. That one's probably equally rang as true for me. The little hinges swing big doors has always been one that's stuck with me. And then capacity ahead of demand. I think the old, Field of Dreams, you'll build it and they will come. I think there is a lot of truth in that. So if you build the practice with design and specificity in mind, it'll turn into what you want it to be. Like, I truly enjoy what I do most days. I'm not going to lie and say there's not stuff I do that doesn't always light me up, but by and large, I'm doing what I want to do the way I want to do it. And then it really doesn't become work per se. And you can really be in that moment of Zen or genius or happiness where I'm doing things that I find fulfillment in. It also happens to provide for a means of providing a living, which is great. And I get to do it with people that I enjoy doing it with the team and the referral partners. It just becomes very synergistic moving forward. But those three of discipline equals freedom, little hinges swing big doors, and capacity ahead of demand, I would say are probably things that have really stuck with me over the years.
I have two questions. I'll start with the first one, which is you keep referring to it as a practice, and it strikes me that that's an important word. Would you define why you use that term? Because I
guess that comes from having been a former accountant. Like if you listen to professionals, they don't call it my mortgage business or I'm going to get some loans. It's a practice. If I'm a doctor, I run a doctor practice. I'm a chiropractor, I run a chiropractic practice. I'm an accountant, I run an accounting practice. It provides that next level up. And that also, I think, shifts the mindset of this is truly a career and a living for me. This isn't something that I'm going to go do this for a while because the money was easy when refinances were dropping out of the sky, and then I'm going to escape to the next puck, wherever it is. It's truly a shift in the mindset of I'm building a practice. I'm a financial professional, and I'm going to do my damnedest to be the best person people are going to interact with. And that's on me or on you as an operator of how good are you going to be? You can invest in yourself and take your skills as high as possible. That practice is what I bring to the market. This is our mortgage practice. That here's how you interact with us. And it goes back to the perfect loan process. That becomes your filter. Occasionally we get a client who doesn't want to go through that process. Well, I would say really 100% of the time, that's usually somebody we didn't want to do business with. And when I break my rules of what I refer to it internally as is, okay, we're going to let you bypass our process and we're going to go jump in at this stage when we should have done this, this, and this. It's always a miserable transaction. I'm angry at myself at the end of that time frame. And that's the client that nobody likes dealing with. So having it as that practice, it's a business, it's a career. It's not just this is something I'm going to dabble in.
Not just the client, the referral partner too, that wants to buck that process is not the referral partner you want to be working with either.
Yeah. And I mean, that one, look, that's a lot harder. I mean, I'm not going to lie, it's like, okay, do I really, we had a partner that we worked with for a number of years. She didn't want to do things the way we wanted to do it. She wasn't very appreciative of the team and the effort put in. And I finally manned up and just said, look, I don't think we're a good fit long-term. It may be best for you to find another operator in our market to work with. I can't provide you what you're looking for, and it doesn't make for a great experience for us. And she's like, okay. I mean, and what's been interesting is she started to come back full circle here after about a 5-year hiatus where she's like, I really want to work with you again. Okay, great. Here's how we're going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. After she saw the light after a while. The other question that I had is you've referred to supply in front of demand. And, my question, I guess, is that's something that is easily said and much more difficult for most people to do, especially in the mortgage business because of the cyclical nature of things, right? So, how have you worked with any fears that you may have had around building supply in front of demand? Because it does take some guts to do that. And what wisdom and advice do you have for people about that?
I think the thing I learned early, and I'll give my former branch manager credit for this, it was always stay focused on purchase money. Refis come and go, and refinances, I think Craig's saying is, purchases pay your salary, refinances are what you retire off of. There's probably a lot of truth in that statement. But if you look, in any given year, there's about 4 million people that are going to transact in the United States that are going to buy a home, no matter what the market is. So you go, okay, there's at least some base level of business, give or take, no matter what happens, I can earn and get that. And then it's just a matter, you just go backwards in the math and going, what does that look like in my market? And how many people do I need? I look at it as I want to always be at 70% of our peak capacity. So with 13 people, I strip out the people that are, not truly touching a loan. So that's 2 people. That leaves us with 11 folks, 5 units. We can comfortably do 55 to 60 loans a month. So I want our average to be 70% of that, which would be roughly 42 to 45 transactions. That's usually where we're at in most given years. Then you just add to that as you start to get above that. Like, let's say you go 42%, 42 units is my 70% usage. And now I'm averaging 48. That's where I go, I need to go higher and add another person. I still have bandwidth within the team because we're not running at 100% of our capacity. We're adding them early enough because then you have time to train them because you're not running balls out. You have time to make sure that you get them onboarded properly because my metrics are 6 months before they know what the hell you're talking about, 12 months before they're even semi-operational, and 24 months before they get to some level of mastery. So anybody you're going to add, you can figure it's going to be 2 years before they're truly operationally capable of doing what you need them to do. So you got to plan that runway well in advance. And then if you're good at what you do, you should have confidence in investing in yourself. I mean, you look at all these people spending all this money and all this garbage that doesn't really move the needle. I mean, at the end of the day, this is very simple business. I need to be in front of people who have need for my skills to borrow money, and I want to be in front of people who can refer those people to me. That's it. There's nothing else to it. It's just you got to focus on that and really kind of strip away everything else that's just a magic, silver shiny bubble that's going to dissipate over time. That's one of the things I've come to appreciate from the years of being in the L360 and the master's program is you get to see what works really quickly. And then you can go, I'm just going to focus on that almost to exclusivity of anything else. And I would say you'd be amazed at how much business you can get from just 1 or 2 approaches within the market. And then you just simply go, I'm going to build the capacity to facilitate that.
Beautiful answer. And I think that, keeps going back to that investing in yourself and having confidence in yourself. The building capacity in front of demand is much easier to do when you know that you're a professional, that you're running a practice, and that you are good at what you do. If you're not investing in yourself and in your education, it becomes a very fearful endeavor to
also
to
very
do
motivating that. When you have a bunch of mouths to feed, you need to go get some loans to go fill them.
For sure. It forces you to do the right things. Teachers and benefactors, who are maybe 1 or 2 teachers and benefactors that have had a big impact on you, and what did you learn from them?
Well, not to blow smoke up your skirt, but you've definitely been one. So, I mean, truly, when I got in 2006, Loan Toolbox was one of the first things I got into 12 months into the business. And it's just like, this is it. This is the system. This guy's got it figured out. So I truly mean that with all sincerity. You have been one of the biggest influences on my mortgage practice and the things I've swiped and adapted over the years. Not to make anybody feel uncomfortable, Todd Duncan's another person that I've learned a lot from in studying his stuff. I think his teachings on trust and his scripting are equally great. And there's been a lot of people over the years for a season that had impacts in my practice, in my life, for whatever I was in that time of, when I was doing 3 loans a month, being able to see what it looked like to get to 5 loans and 7 loans and 10 loans. I think you should, I also am a big fan of that bigger pile theory of you always want to go learn from someone who's doing more than you or has been there and done that, because again, it'll help you shave off so much time. I truly believe I've shaved off at least a decade in my time in coaching from what I would do for mistakes. So getting that further ahead that quickly by being able to model success from others and learning and taking that journey without having to actually walk through it to go, don't do this, do say this, do this, this works. This is the thing that you need to focus on consistently and not have to do so much trial and error.
Well, thank you for the compliment. I'm glad to hear that I've had an impact on you in that way. And I think you did a really nice job there of outlining the things that you've learned from the different sources. And yeah, I mean, for me, like I remember very, very vividly, like it was a long freaking time ago now, but it was probably 25 years ago that I was sitting in the audience at a Todd Duncan event, a little more than 25 years now that I think about it. And there was some of the industry icons were on stage, like Greg Frost and Jeff Lake and people like that. And I remember having this epiphany. There's like 500 people in the audience and I was one of them. And I remember looking up there and realizing the only difference between all of us down here and those folks up there is that they're doing it and we're not. And like they're telling us what they're doing. Now I just need to go home and trust that that works and do it with excellence, which is what I did. And my business blew up. So for those of you listening to this interview, know that, there's breadcrumbs being dropped right in front of you right now. Just follow the path. I mean, it leads to a lot more success and abundance. Final question for you is, if you could turn back the clock and have a conversation with your 18-year-old self with all the wisdom that you have right now, what is the one thing that you would share with him?
I would say the biggest thing I would share with him is it's going to work out. So all those things, and just to dive back to that one question just a second, I mean, I would say probably the biggest mentor in my life was my dad before he passed. So much of what I am today was molded and shaped through my father and my mother. And my 18-year-old self was a lot more rebellious and not the version of me that I am today. Trust that your parents are right, know that they have your best interests at heart, and then trust it's all going to work out. I think I was very anxious to realize the immediacy of success, always wanting to, skip several steps ahead. And sometimes there is beauty in the struggle and the journey. Not that you have to go back to the accounting thing. Nowhere's written, you got to wait 12 years to realize that success. So there's times where that's not true, but there's also times where, I think the thing I struggled with, especially starting in this business, was you see these very successful originators, you go like, I want to be there. What you don't realize is the 10 or 15 or 20 years of blood, sweat, tears, really hard toil, making sacrifices to realize it, and realize that, if you follow those steps and those models, it's going to work out, and don't be so anxious and enjoy that journey. I'm 41 and still very young. I just look back and go like, I probably could have enjoyed the journey a little more along the ways instead of being so focused on what's next and how do I get there. But I do think that's also a big piece of the success. So I think there's a balancing act in there. But if I'm specifically giving advice to my own 18-year-old self, it would be chill out, dude, and enjoy it. And it's going to work out.
Beautiful wisdom. And I hope that that's something that you can give to your 41-year-old self too. In any moments of stress, it's all going to work out. You've already gotten to the finish line. Now it's just a matter of enjoying the ride, right? So Caleb, it was really, it was an honor to interview you. And I know that everybody that listens to this is going to get a tremendous amount of value. And I'll debrief this call in the post-mortem coaching, which will be super fun for me. I took a lot of notes. Thanks so much for the time and for being such a great teacher, bro.
Thank you for letting me be a part of it.